with the protocols that coaches are putting together for them here, I think that there would actually be a lot more people that would be dead, let alone in better shape.
My next guest has been on before. People love him. I'm actually just getting you on for the views, bro, at the end of the day. But let me try to do you justice by giving you a good introduction. I would say, obviously, the most well-known, most established coach within the industry, a coach with a bunch of, other trainers below you that are also obviously very established in the industry and well-known, and someone that is known for amazing, feats with athletes like Sibu. So Jack, bro, and actually myself, bro.
I was just about to say that stellar athlete, old Jesse Pretorius.
At Worlds.
Yes.
Jack, thank you so much for coming on again.
Yeah, thanks very much, Jess. Thanks for that introduction. I don't know so much about those accolades. Well, I'm very grateful for you blowing my trumpet. But yeah, it's great to be on. I enjoy talking to you. I enjoy your show. And any excuse to come and talk a bit of smack in the fitness industry and get some shit off my chest, I'm very happy to oblige.
But I got one thing I want to get off my chest.
Yes.
Starting off, so, and you've obviously experienced it as well, is clients, who will be with you, and then 1 month later, you see another coach posting about them in their story. And then you look at them and be like, well, this person looks completely different than when I helped them. They've either regressed terribly or they didn't send me actual photos that was them at the time. The amount of times, and I'll mention his name, Tristan van der Bijl, which is fine. A lot of people, because obviously we've got a similar demographic of clients. So I'll have a client or he'll have a client. I'll see them in his story. Most of the time it's me first and then I see them on Tristan's story. I'll do a challenge with people for 3 months and then I'll post a progress photo of them within like the challenge, how they progress to the challenge. And then Tristan will DM me like, bro, that's my client. And I'll be like, well, bro, obviously I didn't know that. We both got the guy's money, so who cares?
Look, I think that there's this misnomer in the industry as a whole, in all industries, that the client is always right. That couldn't be further from the truth. Yeah. I'm of the opinion that a lot of the time, more often than not, clients are cunts. Well,
bro, if the client was always right, they would be the ones, paying themselves to look good.
100%. They're paying us for our opinion, not the other way around. I just think that, I'm the first person to call out coaches for disingenuous behavior or ridiculous gear protocols and so on and so forth. But let's make no mistake that this industry tends to attract a particular niche of person. And the clients that perpetually coach hop or don't fulfill their contractual obligations. I mean, it's quite a closely knit industry. I mean, you're a coach, I'm a coach, Tristan's a coach, Tristan Maria is a coach. We all talk. And it's very easy to see those clients that are jumping. And the first people to shout out and say, oh, well, Jesse didn't give me my meal plan. He never replied to my messages. But you chat to Jesse, he's like, oh, well, he didn't reply to your invoice.
Yeah.
He didn't pay you for 2 months. And then he has the audacity and the gall to get uptight with you because you didn't reply to his questions in those months where he hadn't remunerated you for your services. So I think it's very strange very strange behavior, but it's something that I've come to expect regrettably in the fitness industry as a whole. And I've spoken about this before. I said, unfortunately, we're brushing shoulders with a large cohort of people who base their sense of self-worth on how they look. And I've said this again, that they've replaced the ostentatiousness of cars and money for tattoos and muscles. And these people are of the opinion that they are greater than everyone else because they've got a good physique. And people are prioritizing that over loyalty, integrity, and most importantly, honesty.
And I think it's also social media that's done that because it's inflated the egos. If you look at someone who looks amazing, there's so many people at the gym who look amazing. Like, it's usually the older people that look amazing. Maybe they do have tattoos, maybe they don't, but they don't put it all on social media. There's amazing athletes in this country that aren't on social media. And, being on social media and getting a little bit of, attention always makes people get that little bit of a big head that thinks they are, above someone else. And I think that's within this industry is most people that have made it are big-ish on social media, and that's what they think have made it.
Yeah, I think it's obviously we'll have different definitions as to what making it is.
No, that's why I used air quotes.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, jumping on, saying I've got 40,000 or 50,000 followers, but you don't have a brass bean to scratch your ass, and 90% of the people you associate with think I'm going to respectfully disagree with you, or not even respectfully disagree with you about your success accolades. It's very sad, unfortunately, but it's a lot more common in this industry because it's very shallow and it's very fickle. But you know that. I mean, we've been in it for a long time, and we've crossed proverbial swords, not in an acrimonious way. I mean, in terms of we've brushed shoulders rather, both as professionals in the industry. We were just talking about business prior to we started filming. You were an athlete of mine historically. Before that, we chatted a lot on social media. We've seen a lot of people come and go, both at STS and obviously with Jester Fitz. So, I think it's just more of the same. People are just going to continue doing what they do, and we just obviously need to double down with regards to our payment terms and managing our own expectations. And it's not about being pessimistic. It's about being pleasantly surprised in the event that people actually honor their agreements and honor their word and do what they said they were going to do at the offset. Yeah. But it's social media is very, very polarizing at the moment. It's why I'm off Facebook. Actually, I've been off Facebook for over a year. Best thing I've ever done. It was just extremely taxing on me. I felt it was very onerous to sit there and just get so worked up over how stupid people were. And, not that I'm saying that I'm, this vast vat of knowledge and intelligence, far from it. But I just think that people as a whole are just so vastly unaware of their own confirmation biases and their own cognitive dissonance. And all they are doing is interested in putting forth a point and answering with the intention of replying, and engaging with the intention of replying in lieu of engaging with the intention of understanding. And that's why I've gone off social media as a whole. And also the virtue signaling, particularly in this fitness industry, is absolutely fucking nauseating.
It was something you said you wanted to talk about in terms of that.
Look,
it could be very vague.
I just think it's very strange, and it's someone will post something, and you read the comments and it's like, oh, so stunning and so brave, and someone's doing something. I mean, because someone posting something about anti-bullying, and you're just reading this and you're like, because of course, if I'm a criminal, but I tell everyone on social media that I'm not a criminal.
Spoken like a true criminal.
Yeah, that means that I'm not a criminal.
Yeah, exactly.
In the same way that I can be the biggest racist ever, but I post a black square in solidarity with Black Lives Matter, and automatically, because I'm virtue signaling and pandering to my audience, that means that I'm not a racist. Yeah. But behind closed doors, like I said, I'm not remunerating my domestic worker on par with minimum wage requirements, far less, and just my general tenure. So, social media, I mean, you and I can talk about that for hours and hours and hours. It drives me up the fucking wall. I hate the facade that people put on, and this whole sort of pseudo-altruistic, be kind. I always read this thing, be kind, be kind. Of course I agree that people need to be kind, but that being kind doesn't mean at the expense of truth and honesty and transparency, which are virtues, in my opinion, I feel are far more important than just being kind for the sake of kind's sake. And how do you determine being kind? One could look at a trivial example like sitting down and your athlete hasn't fulfilled their obligations, they haven't met their mandate, and they haven't done the work to give them the results that they are expected or they expect to acquire, and you sit down with them and you're like, you don't look good, and people, be kind. I'm not telling that person in this particular incident with the intention of denigrating them or berating them or insulting them, but I have to be honest with them. I have to manage their expectations. And in one way, I'm being kind, because if I don't have that conversation with them, they're going to stand on stage, they're going to come stone last. The judges are not going to mark them or take kindly to their subpar conditioning. The same thing goes with my clients. Perspective goes a long way. I've said this to you before. I've had clients that have lost children. I've had clients that have lost family members, are going through divorces. Clients, particularly in the last year and a half, that have become insolvent or liquidated their business as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. And they manage to meet their mandate. They track their meals, they meet their training sessions. Those people require kindness. Those people require my time and attention and my love.
I guess it's the same as respect. You know, respect is earned. Kindness is also kind of earned because you need to know, you know, and understand a person. You can't, if someone just comes to you and is like, how's my outfit? You don't know them. Like, you're going to be like, okay, I don't, whatever, you know, like if someone asks you for a compliment, seeking a compliment, and you don't know them, they haven't, you know, they're not your friend, they're not a family member, whatever, and you don't know them from bar soap, they haven't earned that level of kindness. Like if Sarah, okay, you probably would be honest with Sarah,
yes,
but if she,
to my detriment, very
exactly,
often.
that's what I mean. So like obviously kindness on social media is kind of like that situation with Sarah, where you know she actually doesn't look good in that outfit, but you're going to pretend that she does look good just to make her feel better about herself. You know, that's almost what it is. On social media.
Again, it doesn't also just mean being a complete provocateur or a hunt. I mean, you can approach certain scenarios with an element of diplomacy. I'm not saying you don't have to do that. Of course, you know, try and do that, particularly with a spouse or a business partner or someone that you have
mainly
some form of relationship.
Because you know what's going to happen after if you don't tell her what she wants to hear.
Yes, yeah, no, for sure. I mean, that's a big issue of contention. Sarah and I butt heads quite often because I just tell it like it is. But in the
then
same
she always
vein,
knows where she stands with you.
Exactly. You know, when Sarah comes to me and she says, oh, babe, I'm feeling very fat today. And I'm like, well, actually, you look great. Like a light switch, I can see her mentality switch off because she knows that I'm going to tell her.
You're not going to lie.
Exactly. And that for me is far more authentic than putting some sort of facade over it under the guise of kindness, you know. And this, like I was saying, this whole sort of pseudo-altruistic kindness vibe, I think is a lot of disingenuous, dishonest, charlatan cunts are hiding under that sort of veil that people sort of, you know, be kind to them because they don't want to be called out for their fuckery and their unacceptable behavior in the industry. And the sooner we can out those people and their behavior, I think the sooner we can move forward to getting a far more coherent, functioning unity within the fitness industry. You know, if someone does something disingenuous, for example, a supplement company is, you know, spiking their protein or doing something like that, or, you know, there's an underground lab that's selling something that's not what they claim it is, or there's a coach that's not qualified and stuff like that, that needs to be brought to the public's attention. Those people need to be called out for that, or at the very least, those people need to be afforded the opportunity to account for themselves and for their behavior or their product services and so on and so forth. You can't, oh, you know, JC is just copying and pasting his plans, he's not qualified, but let's be kind. You know, let's just tell him how great he is and how amazing his transformations are, you know, or, yeah, I just don't believe in that. I mean, sometimes you have to pick your battles. That's why I've moved off Facebook. Sometimes I avoid engaging in that just to avoid the conflict because I only have so much energy in a day and so many clients, and I'd rather apportion my energy amongst my clients and you're not throwing good energy after bad. But I'm also not going to walk on eggshells in the event that someone has done something that I think is egregiously incorrect or said something that I think is complete horseshit. I'm going to call it like it is. Yeah. And if people are going to say, oh, Jack, you're not kind, I'll wear that label, or I'll wear that label as a badge of honor. So be it. Speaking
of kindness, should we allow men now to go into women's sport? Don't you think that's being, you know, is it kind? Is it?
I'm just going to call it like it is. I think that that's absolute bullshit. You know, I'm of the opinion that your rights end where mine begin. I think that everyone has the right to do whatever they want, but that doesn't give you the right. Your rights can't infringe on mine, you know? So this is a big issue of contention that has sort of raised over the last 10 years. I think this men, or biological men rather, in women's sports kind of undermines the suffragette movement, the plight of feminism for the last 20, 30, 40 years. Gender-based violence, for example. I mean, that's a big issue of contention in our country. And the biggest reason for that occurring is because biological men have a physical superiority over women, which disingenuous or bad men, you know, take advantage of, and they beat their partners. And, you know, basically this whole, you know, biological men competing in women's sports, or biological men, it just completely undermines that. The equivalent would be like me, you know, applying for BBEE because I identify as a black person. No, just by saying that I identify completely undermines apartheid and, the civil rights movement in 1965 and so on and so forth, whatever the case may be. I just feel that it's very disingenuous. I don't think it's acceptable. And I don't think I think that the amount of time that people are investing trying to argue why that this whole notion is ridiculous is in itself ridiculous.
Yeah.
Men are physically superior to women. That's the way that it is. The other side of the argument is, some of these men biological men are undergoing hormone replacement therapy and stuff like that to become biological women. A man cannot become a woman. And even if you have taken those hormones in the same way that a bodybuilder may, or a sports person may have used androgens or anabolics for 80% of the year, then all of a sudden they come off. Those inroads and those developments in performance that they have made while being on those performance-enhancing drugs have leapfrogged them to the point that when they're off, they're already many, many, many steps ahead of the competition. So someone that was born a biological male has that sort of exponentially amortized over many, many, many years. Those androgens, not just from a hormone perspective, but muscle fiber distribution and so on and so forth. So I think it's completely ridiculous. I'm not saying that transgender people shouldn't have their own divisions and things like that. I think absolutely they should be recognized. Everyone should be whatever they want to be. But, in the same way, if I want to identify as a black person, people can argue with me, and that's, they can tell me I'm wrong because it's my opinion, and I can call myself a black person, but that doesn't mean that I have the right to tell you that you have to identify me as a black person. It's the same way if you want to identify as a unicorn or whatever, that's your prerogative, but you have no right to tell me that I have to identify you. People are like, why is that important from a semantic perspective? It's very important. Something as trivial as, a police report. You going in there and saying I was attacked by a 6'2" woman called, Jacqueline Lotter. It starts creating massive complicated issues. You weren't. You were attacked by a 6'2" white blonde man called Jack Lotter. That's where all of these differences become very, very important. And then obviously that extends now to the states and, the rules that they're passing now in Congress to allow minors to undergo gender reassignment surgery and chemical castration without the approval of their parents. I just think that it's complete madness. Especially
when their brain isn't even fully developed yet.
Well, you need a license to get a car, you need a license to get alcohol, and you need your parents present for a plethora of.
You can't even get a tattoo without your parents until you're 16, but now you can change your.
You can have your hormones. Or you can be chemically or surgically castrated, because you identify with something. I mean, we all go through phases. I mean, when I was 5 or 6, I played with Barbies for like 2 or 3 months.
And then again when you were 30.
Again when I was 33. It's a learning curve, but. So it's a contentious issue. I tend to get a lot of hate for it. I mean, I was warned on Instagram. I got a warning for basically making a story, and the story read, "Men are not women." So this whole liberal bias, particularly in big tech and the censorship and the coerced censorship that they're trying to sort of push on everyone under the guise of the pseudo-altruism, the kindness discussion that we had earlier, it's all sort of amalgamating into one big, very ugly toilet.
You shared something on social media the other day. Was someone suing Facebook or suing Instagram or one of these tech companies for how they are censoring people? What was that about?
Candice Owens. She's suing the fact checkers who basically erroneously fact checked her.
She's now on the Daily Show.
She's on the Daily Wire.
Daily Wire.
She's a conservative activist. I like her a hell of a lot. I don't agree with a lot of her talking points, but I enjoy quite a lot of her other talking points. But the point of the matter is that who checks the fact checkers? Who made these fact checkers the arbiters of truth? Who made big tech the arbiters of truth? Love him or hate him. A lot of people at the beginning of the year were lauding the fact that Donald Trump was banned off Facebook and banned off Twitter. I couldn't think of anything more dangerous for free speech. You've got the Ayatollah of Iran, for example, who has on numerous occasions on Twitter called for the genocide of every man, woman, and child in Israel. That's a boosted page by Twitter. His stuff's fine, but stuff that Trump said that may be seen to cite insurrections, no, we're going to remove him for that purpose. It's very, very, very slippery slope. Obviously the discussions of freedom of speech, if you believe in freedom of speech, that means that I believe in your ability to say whatever you want, no matter how egregiously unacceptable I feel that is about me, my beliefs, and my family. And I support you saying that. That's the whole idea of free speech. In the same vein, we look at the lockdown restrictions with regards to smoking and tobacco. That's completely antithetical to who I am, smoking and tobacco ingestion, whatever it is. I mean, if you've been a client of mine and you vape or whatever it is, you'll see what a hard time I give you. My mandate is, if you want to be coached by me, you want to really dot the I's and cross the T's and reach the highest echelons of performance, particularly when I'm incorporating so many small things that might make 0.5% or 1% difference to the outcome of your results. It's all those incremental gains, and then you smoke.
For that reason, maybe for the people that don't really understand, is it more just because, the lack of oxygen, you got less functioning lungs? So is that the reason?
Everything.
It's just those small little increments that you add.
How it affects hormone profiles, how it's bad for muscular hypertrophy, protein synthesis, recovery, lung capacity, all the carcinogenic nature of tobacco ingestion as a whole, and so on and so forth. Like I was saying, if I'm going to incorporate something to your diet plan that makes 0.5% difference, which will make a very, very big difference over, amortized over a 1, 2, 3, 6 year basis, but you're smoking post-workout, it's completely counterintuitive.
And it's almost, the more you don't do it, it slowly increases and gets better, but the more you do it, it exponentially can decrease your potential.
Absolutely.
So it's almost, yes, it's good to not do it, but it's far worse if you look at it by doing it, because, the level of improvement you're going to see is going to be slow by not doing it, but the level of regression almost is going to be a lot greater.
For sure. So the point I'm making is I'm vehemently against smoking. But during the lockdown, I couldn't believe that the government had prohibited smoking the way that it did. And because I'm of the opinion that, as sovereign individuals, we should be able to make up our own decisions about what we do or do not do. The less government control, the better. Government mustn't touch my money, mustn't touch my property, mustn't tell me what to do. The more it leaves me alone and leaves other people alone, the better.
So you must love paying tax, bro.
Yeah, we really, really enjoy paying tax. I mean, we get so much for it, but that's a whole other topic of contention. Point I'm making with regards to free speech is the same way. I stood in solidarity against those tobacco restrictions because I thought that they were completely tyrannical and authoritarian. I didn't agree with them, much in the same way that Joe Biden, who I can't stand, if he was kicked off social media, I would be vehemently opposed to that because I don't think it's right. It's a very slippery slope. I mean, we saw last week Ron DeSantis, who's the governor of Florida. He basically held a press conference with a whole lot of other authorities discussing how his coronavirus mandates. They had no lockdown restrictions or very little, very limited, no mask mandates, and their coronavirus cases are some of the best in the whole country, despite the fact that Florida is one of the most obese states.
And it's a very warm climate, so it's just a climate where it should thrive.
Sure. And, Texas, for example, is just, they've removed all of their lockdown restrictions and basically done away with mask mandates. And their coronavirus cases have miraculously dropped substantially. I stand corrected, and people can obviously fact check me themselves, but I think it was upwards of 25% and more. So Ron DeSantis was discussing this. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter removed that content because they felt that it would... I was sitting there like, who makes Mark Zuckerberg determine whether they should or should not post it?
I understand if it's a video about kids being trafficked, like human trafficking, and it could affect younger viewers. Maybe I understandably censor to people maybe that have signed through Gmail and are of a younger age, but don't, like I did a podcast with a guy about weed.
Yes.
Because it was, it's semi-illegal in South Africa. It said when I posted, it said, this will be, shared and distributed a lot less than normal videos because it covers topics that are sensitive. Like, how is that free speech?
Yeah, like I said, it's a very contentious issue. And I think it's a discussion that we all need to be having, because as soon as we put checks and balances in by people questioning it, I think that's a very, very healthy, any form of discourse obviously is a very healthy medium, from the left and the right, because we'll obviously find that centrist middle ground that's so important. But yeah, I think that the impunity with which big tech is operating now is very, very, very scary. And you can see a lot of European countries are putting measures in place to try and mitigate that as much as possible. Australia is as well. And the more they do that, the better. Unfortunately, United States, as the leader of the free world, sort of leads from the front. And their lack of doing that is going to cause a lot of issues.
But it's because big tech almost control America anyway. So they're not
The
going
fact
to...
that big tech could basically take the most powerful man on planet Earth and silence him overnight, basically just, flex and get rid of Donald Trump overnight, should make anyone very, very, very scared. The amount of control and the amount of the control over the spread and the sort of engagement of information it's gargantuan. It's also one of the reasons that I tried to withdraw, particularly from Facebook. Obviously,
there was another social media that you were sharing, another platform that wasn't really censored at all.
Yes, it's gone completely blank. Gab came out, which was quite good.
There was one in particular I've completely forgotten what it was. I went on it, but then there was no one really on it, and I kind of just deleted it.
Yeah, it's building. I can't remember what it is. I've just gone completely blank, Jess. It was actually quite big. Just see what's on my phone here.
Yeah, I think when we come to a point where everybody is scared to say something because they're like, my life is on social media. I'm too scared to be honest. I'm too scared to say what I truly believe because I don't want to get taken off and I don't want to get censored.
Well, I've heard from quite high up in some very big financial institutions that a lot of people in their hiring and job acquisitions have psychologists that go through your personal Facebook. And they basically compartmentalize what you may have said in a status or something like that. And they use that to pretty much character assassinate you and determine whether you're worthy for the job or not.
And what's interesting is it's obviously maybe people do change, of course. But like that tweet with Kevin Hart where he said something about gay people.
Yes.
So, and then he obviously wasn't allowed to host the Oscars or whatever it was. You can't tell me that the moment people found out, he was suddenly then accepting about gay people. He, obviously, maybe that joke wasn't saying he's not accepting, but he made that joke. It was like 6 years ago or whatever. It was something like, if my son comes home and he's gay, I'm going to hit him on the head or something like that.
Yeah, I can't remember what he
said.
So
that it was something similar to that. And then that was 6 years prior to him being a host of the Oscars. Then when he was announced as host, someone found this tweet. And then he had to step down as the host. You can't tell me the moment people found it and he was told to step down, then he was suddenly so apologetic about it. So that's what's interesting is people are obviously maybe he isn't against gay people, but he made a joke about it. As a comedian, that's also a difficult thing now is you can't make jokes about things you previously were allowed to make jokes about. Just because you make jokes about things doesn't mean that's how you feel. You can make jokes about everything and everyone should be allowed to make jokes about anything and everyone else should be allowed to make jokes about you. So like how does he now, he's been said this was like 4 years ago, not allowed to perform at the Oscars, not allowed to host it. He's now had to apologize about it. There's so many things.
That's cancel culture. I'm of the opinion, and I've said that before with Donovan Tooth Panda scenario. I didn't actually watch his entire video. I've only heard via the grapevine. But with Kevin Hart, for example, I just think that I'm of the opinion you should never ever apologize to the mob. They're the most unforgiving, ruthless sort of ilk of people out there. Number one, they only are sort of happy when your life is in absolute ruins. And when you sort of apologize, all you do is you lose your sort of integrity and your authenticity to a huge degree. I believe in doubling down and telling more people to fuck off. I think it's absolutely...
So would you not say, okay, I did this and like Kevin, let's say, I did this and I don't like gay people. Rather just say, I made a joke, it was just a joke. Like how do you go about, doubling down in terms of like what he did? Like how would you handle that, do you think?
No, I think first of all, people are allowed to make mistakes. And it's extremely hypocritical for anyone, the old biblical saying, he without sin must cast the first stone. I mean, I look at some of the stuff that I may have written on Facebook years ago and I think to myself, what the fuck was I thinking? In the same way that I look at some of the diet protocols and things like that I put together for clients 5 or 6 years. People are allowed to grow. It doesn't mean that we flip-flopping. It means that, it means that we have the ability to change our mind and our opinion, which is the value of engaging in discourse and having these conversations. Just shutting down someone that you don't agree with is it's completely antithetical to a well-functioning society and a developing society and people growing and moving out of their own echo chambers. So, how would I have reacted if I was in his shoes. I've often thought about it because, I mean, I'd be lying if I said I didn't get anxiety at the prospect of some of the stuff that I put out there is quite edgy and obviously ruffles a lot of feathers and what the blowback would be. But yeah, I just double down and say, obviously I said what I said. I maintain the fact that I don't, if he feels the way I don't have any homophobic tendencies, and as a comedian, it's my job. It was within the culture at that particular time to engage in those discussions. The thing is that there's a sort of Marxist thought within social circles at the moment that we need to try and make everyone equal, and everyone needs to think the same. You should think the same way about gay people and about Muslim people and about that. And that for me is not a celebration of humanity. Humanity is the acknowledgement, the celebration, the recognition of our differences. You have your culture as a Chinese person or an Asian person, and these are your religious beliefs, and I respect those differences. I'm not trying hard to make us all the same. And cancel culture is very antithetical to that. So you could talk about that ages and ages and ages and ages. I'm not a fan. Like I said, I believe in doubling down and telling more people to fuck off. But
now you said that you look at maybe like diet plans and training plans that you used to do prior, and quite a few years ago, and you think that's not as effective because you're still getting great results then. So are you much more effective now with the way you're doing things, or are you still very effective then? It's just maybe you did it a backward way to get the results compared to now how you would help people?
I think people just need to be more critical with themselves. I feel that if people are more hypercritical of themselves, they almost become impervious to from criticism from their naysayers. People should be striving to better themselves. Nothing grows in comfort zones. You should be trying to get better in your career and your profession and your relationships. And in so doing, you'll go back and look at some of the stuff that I did. I mean, it wasn't to the point that I ever egregiously compromise anyone's health or anything like that, but just in terms of the way that science has developed and the thought process that goes into macronutrient timing and macronutrient totals. And for example, I mean 10, 15 years ago we were all of the opinion that you'd eat multiple small meals during the course of the day to increase your metabolism. I mean, that's a very antiquated trail of thought now. Looking back at those meal plans thinking, shit, I was so dumb for thinking that. Because of obviously all the evidence that's presented to us in today's sort of fitness realm, with all the evidence-based studies and things like that, and all of those bastions of truth like the Lane Nortons and so on and so forth that are out there, and Brad Schoenfields that are putting all that information, all the studies out there. So, it's just about, we all need to be hypercritical of ourselves. And I think if we are hypercritical of ourselves, we grow and we develop. And like I said, we become completely impervious to that cancel culture or what other people think. That doesn't mean that we can't take accountability and responsibility for when we have done wrong and when we have fucked up. But, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. If I've done something to unintentionally hurt someone or something like that, then I'll always double down and double over backwards to rectify and to do right by someone who I may have slighted unintentionally or hurt unintentionally. But that's a big difference between doing that and apologizing to the mob who believe you need to think a certain way and pressure you to go against your ideals and what you have done and what you think, because they feel that they are their thought process is superior to yours, and it's not.
Speaking of people that indirectly affect people and put their health at risk, and coaches in particular, and I know it was one of the questions that people wanted you to talk about, was these coaches that put their athletes on so much juice and so many PEDs and so many harmful substances just to get the results.
Dude, look, this is something we've spoken about for years and years. I don't think it's ever going to improve. I know a lot of these coaches personally, they give less than zero fucks what we say about it. Hopefully, there's a shift with regards to clients looking to, while sitting there and looking to acquire a coach, maybe listen to what we're saying, what other people are saying, and try and have a little bit more.
Because also a client's going to come and they're not going to know exactly how bad everything that they take does to them and how much it's going to affect them. So they might not. Going into it, they just like, look how amazing the other athletes look. Surely it can't be that bad.
I mean, there's an expectation that we have as coaches for clients to have the utmost faith in us. One thing I say to clients before starting with me is that I encourage you to ask me as many questions as possible. One just needs to follow me on my weekly Q&As to see how much information I give away freely and the effort that I go into writing very elaborate responses to some of these intricate questions. I love talking about the subject. I want my clients to ask me questions so that they can understand the journey, because if they can compartmentalize their journey and where we're going and the timescales, I think they achieve better results. But there's a big difference between clients asking us questions and questioning your coach. I don't want to be questioned as a coach. There's very, very different. So, I'm trying to instill that ethos in my clients. But then in the same way, we're like, why aren't clients taking exception with their coaches for putting them on egregious amounts of gear? I think it's the same thing. So it's difficult, Jesse. But for example, and I've used this I've told you about this example before. I had a mother, I think, of 2 or 3 children that was, late 30s or early 40s, so stand corrected. And she had been with a coach historically, and she sat down and she went through her gear regimen or previous gear regimen with me, and my eyes nearly popped out of my head. And then she asked me if I needed her to check her vagina moistness. And that completely blew my mind. I almost couldn't speak. I was like, excuse me? And her previous coach used to ask her to put her fingers into her vagina to evaluate how wet or dry she was.
So it's almost like, okay, you're still wet. We're not taking too much. We still can add a little bit more until we get dry.
Something along those lines. That's what I'm speculating, because it was so fucking bizarre and just unacceptable, but I think it was along the lines of, if she was still wet, then the coach would prescribe more androgens so she'd be less wet. What that basic reproductive physiology has to do with building muscle mass and dropping body fat and stuff like that is beyond me. Maybe they know something that I don't, but it just goes to show you the extent of coach abuse in the industry. And also, to a lesser extent, but still prevalent, is the amount of client naivety in the industry.
And the issue is, if you break a law, you're in the courtroom and you say, sorry, I don't know. You can't plead ignorance. It's the same way with these people actually going to these coaches and being told to take so much stuff and then blaming the coach. They also can't plead ignorance. No one should be allowed to plead ignorance in anything. If you willingly go into something, get told to do something, I believe it's up to you to first do the research. Because yes, if I break a law, I go to the judge and be like, oh, bro, I didn't know. It's the same as, that coach messed up my hormones. I didn't know.
But I also think it's confirmation bias. Jesse, a lot of these people are striving for these incredible physiques, and they will go to a coach who has created a lot of these incredibly physical specimens with the use of huge amounts of androgens and anabolics, and they'll say to the coach, well, what I'm taking is fine. Hey, I'm looking really good, but what I'm taking is fine. And the coach will say, oh, it's absolutely 100%. It just gives them their confirmation bias, because they look a certain way and they want to look a certain way. Again, because they're chasing that sort of subconscious ostentatiousness of muscles and how muscles make them feel. And that's a whole other sort of psychological discussion. But it's very dangerous. At the end of the day, we can only double down and say what our opinion is for how someone should search for a coach. If you decide to use anabolics, it's not your coach's decision, it's your decision. And I maintain that with all of my clients. I'm not a doctor. I'm not an endocrinologist. I'm not qualified, nor am I legally allowed to prescribe, endorse, or promote the use of performance-enhancing drugs or prescription medication. If someone wants information on how to get to a certain level of body fat disposition or compete in a certain category, I'll provide information pertaining to that if it is their decision to use those performance-enhancing drugs of their own volition. And again, my mandate is in the proviso that they are doing their blood work and they're in a position to do that. And everything from that side, all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed. I'm happy for them to engage in sort of taking those compounds, again, of their own volition. The only time where I really put my foot down is if someone's health is compromised, and I then refuse to coach someone unless if they're insistent on taking certain compounds that I don't agree with. it's my house. This is the way that it works. But I will never, ever, under any circumstances, force someone to do something against their will. Someone comes to me, they tell me what they'd like to achieve. We agree on those timescales, and then I just manage their expectations and I provide the blueprint. As I say to everyone, I didn't make the laws of physiology. I'm just relaying the knowledge that I've acquired about physiology onto you, and that has resulted in a lot of my clients historically and athletes getting fantastic results. But that's never at the expense of their health. That's sort of thoughts on that.
How do you approach longevity within bodybuilding? Because I was thinking about this earlier, and I was thinking about like the level of standard. Let's say when we competed at WBFF, obviously when we went to Worlds, different story, but the level of standard of athletes in South Africa.
Yes.
And thinking how I got my pro card, I mean, I was 19 years old.
Yeah.
I was, I don't know, under 75 kilograms, definitely. There's no way that I should have actually got my pro card. Because then I went to World. Obviously, it was just because of maybe the poor standard of athletes.
I think you're being a...
No, but then I go overseas.
I think you're being...
Then I go overseas, I didn't even place. So what I mean is, like, let's compare the level of standard of athlete that used to do WBFF compared to the level of standard now. Like, obviously, still South African level of standard is not amazing. Sure. But the level of standard, even in men's physique, is that Romeo guy that beat me, I don't know if you know him. So I'll show you a photo. Like, he is phenomenal. He would walk away. He's probably better than Williams Falade, or however you want to say it. So, and he was too big for men's physique, but he was doing men's physique against me. If that guy did WBFF, he would have walked away with the show. But now people like him are like, you're one of five, there's 5, 6 amazing people within the federation today. Like, was it easier to get a pro card with WBFF? Was WBFF, obviously, you also turned pro with WBFF, but was it, the level of standard different? Obviously, what you look for is different.
Conflating certain things. First of all, you're conflating different federations, and you're also conflating today's standards with previous standards. I definitely think that the standard of athlete is getting better as a whole. However, WBFF as a whole, the standards to acquiring a pro card have dropped substantially over when you acquired your pro card. So I think you're being a little bit hard on yourself. I think myself and anyone watching this or anyone supports you would disagree with you vehemently. You most definitely deserve to get your pro card and so on.
But then what I believe is, because I'm nowhere near getting an NPC pro card. But
I also disagree with you there. Vehemently,
but that's another. Then why didn't I? Obviously, because there was someone maybe that was better. So maybe we both.
Yeah, look, I could sit there and I could be very critical as to why you didn't acquire your pro card, but I definitely think that you have. If we just polish you up a bit, you are definitely within that realm. But I think the main discussion is why South African athletes are not up to caliber with international athletes. I think to a large degree, yes, it has to do with the PED usage. I think that the underground garbage that we have here. I think if people were actually taking legit stuff with the protocols that coaches are putting together for them here, I think that there would actually be a lot more people that would be dead, let alone in better shape with the egregious drug protocols. I have female athletes approaching me that have been on Tren, Masteron, Equipoise, Primobolan, which I'm obviously, you and I both know is pretty difficult to acquire in first world countries, let alone in South Africa. Proviron, Arimidex, Kesar, and so on and so forth. And I think if they were actually taking legit stuff, they would not only be in better shape, they'd be dead. So yes, we can obviously point fingers at the drug prescription, but again, I'm just going to call it like it is. I don't think that South African athletes have what it takes, or in my experience with the athletes that I have coached, by and large. I've made some incredible champions. I've got quite a lot of pro cards, or I've got a lot of athletes that have acquired pro cards through my coaching services or with my coaching services facilitating their journey. But by and large, 95% of the people that I have trained have not acquired their pro cards. There's one Sibu, there's one Jesse, there's one Dylan, and so on and so forth. It's a very small percentile of people that actually become those outliers in the sport. I can tell you that 95% of people just don't have what it takes mentally. They don't. Particularly in our generation today, people are just soft. People rely too much on androgens to get them, through their piss poor, weak workouts. people are not as consistent on their diet, it's become very, very easy to fall by the wayside. And I see it all the time. You know, athletes come to me, a fantastic athlete, and I'll sit down with them and I'll say, cool, well, your drug prescription is completely unacceptable. I'm not a chemist. You need to clean up. You go for your blood work. And when your blood values are more representative of someone that's not going to die.
Because that's what they're also doing.
No. I think some of them are actually doing that as well. But they you know, and you see the look on their face, and people are extremely uncomfortable to train with me because I'm not giving them ridiculous drug prescriptions. They need to eat a lot more meticulously than they were.
And the sad thing is they're going to think now they're not going to see as good results with you because you're telling them to take less.
But 100% they don't. Because all of a sudden when they go off there's a huge amount of anabolics, their body fat disposition is going to increase. But they're not going to get as pumped. They're not going to be as strong. Their ability to recovery goes down. So automatically they're associating that with poor coaching. This process is not working for me.
There's also subjective results because the long-term results by going to you is going to improve because then they're going to be able to have kids one day. They're going to be able to make their life past 50, you know.
Notwithstanding the fact that as and when they decide to, we agree that they'll start using PEDs again, they'll get far greater results because they haven't got a scenario where they've built a house on the beach or a house on sand. They've created the foundations. And by those foundations, to a huge degree, I mean the mental foundations that are so important. That is compliance, that is consistency, and that is discipline. You know, and I've said this before, a lot of guys that I joke with, who I'm very fond of the industry, come through. They take a lot of stuff. They don't train hard. They're not strong. Their form is dog shit. And they just get great results because they rely extremely, extremely hard on the gear arm. And that's also why there's egregious drug protocols in South Africa, because coaches are just too lazy, or they lack the impetus and the passion to go out there and further their own knowledge, and as such have to rely on a huge amount of drugs to get their clients any semblance of results. You know, I've maintained this, and I've said this often, I'd love to run a transformation in South Africa across all the coaches where we do their blood work before and after, natural. You know, that's where you can really ascertain a coach's weight in gold. Anyone can take a certain amount of train, and, you know, then their macros become, I wouldn't say inconsequential, but not nearly as important as someone that's natural, and get fantastic results, you know. So also something that we can chat about forever and ever and ever, and I could just see myself sort of bleeding off with regards to the health aspect. You know, bodybuilding, you and I discussed maybe talking about the body positivity movement now sort of merging with the fat acceptance movement and so on, and health. And I also, that sword also sort of swings both ways for me, because I get so irritated with, you know, fitness people taking exception with fat, obese people saying, oh, that's so unhealthy. But you're a bodybuilder. You're on a gram a week of train, which is fine. It's your decision. That's what you want to do. But you're in no position to lecture anyone on the merits of health. You know, we can argue why what you're doing is better, because obviously, you know, it's a talentless skill to want to become fat and mediocre. I mean, it's not something that people can revere. Whereas even if you don't really agree with bodybuilding,
I think it would be far more difficult for me to get fat and become like that. It would be far more difficult for me to do that.
Yeah, but that's a reflection. That's a reflection of your character, JC. It's just another feather in your hat. It's not because you, you know, like I said, it's antithetical.
I would love that for 2 days, to be able to eat what I want for 2 days, maybe. But then after that, you kind of everything just goes downhill. The energy levels, the mentality. I think that's also the biggest thing. Why, you know, and it's psychological. You know, why maybe bodybuilders initially say, like, you know, fat people are bad, or it's bad to be fat, is because, you know, you do see the mental positivity and the mental benefit that you have by following, you know, a good diet, something with high omegas, something that it makes you feel more positive, makes you feel more happy, and makes you, you know, think about things a lot more clearer. And that's maybe why, because yes, bodybuilding in terms of taking juice is unhealthy, but, you know, following a healthy diet does make you feel more healthy. You know, you're not seeing the internal damage of juice.
Sure, but I mean, how healthy is it to be, you know, I think that the highest, those outliers and the highest echelons of the sport are not healthy. They're not mentally healthy by psychological standards. You have to be quite cuckoo.
That actually wants to bring
to
me
become
to
a Michael Jordan or a Tiger Woods or a Ronnie Coleman. you're going to have quite a lot of imbalances, and that's going to be a detriment to a lot of other facets of your psyche. And if that's your decision, that's the road that you want to go, that's fine. But there's a very big difference between having a healthy, balanced mindset and achieving the utmost excellence. One of those is only achieved with single-minded sacrifice. So, for me, yes, you can sit for hours and argue the physical ramifications of being obese and so on and so forth and the health benefits. For me, it boils down to, again, this promotion of mediocrity. I don't think that's not virtuous by any measure for me to sit there and stuff your face full of food and get to a position where you're trying to convince other people that you're beautiful, and the only reason that people say you're not beautiful is because of the patriarchy. I think that's horseshit. Okay, in the same vein that a bodybuilder trying to exude that his physique is somehow beautiful to mainstream society is actually beautiful, and society is just, shaming him because of his muscle. It's not beauty. I understand is subjective. Okay, that's a whole other discussion. For me, it's the mental aspect. As a coach, it is my job, it's my mantra, it's in my DNA, it's in my being to want to try and get people to achieve the very best versions of themselves. I do that in a business capacity with the trainers that are underneath me. When I'm sitting down with someone and someone says, listen, I just want to be able to run 5Ks. Every cell in my body lights up and I'm like, why do you want to do 5Ks? Let's train you up to a half marathon. In the same way that someone says, I want to lose 3 kilos. I'm like, why do you want to lose 3? Let's lose 6. Because that's the sort of A-type personality that I have. And that's what you want in a coach. You want someone to push you to achieve results that you otherwise wouldn't have acquired of your own volition. So yeah, that's why this fat acceptance movement is very antithetical to what I am, because it's just promoting mediocrity, and it's promoting a virtuousness that's just not commensurate with, there's no brilliance in that. It's just shit.
And what's interesting is how people, certain things are deemed more unhealthy than others. And obviously there are levels to it, of course.
Yeah.
But, I think it's obviously if you are severely obese and you risk a heart attack and actual death, of course. But, there's people that maybe with 20% body fat who aren't really going to die of a heart attack, Then you have people that, like bodybuilders, who are probably closer to dying from a heart attack. Obviously not all bodybuilders, but certain bodybuilders. And people will be more, okay, maybe a 20% body fat is difficult to tell, but people will be more inclined to think the fat person is more unhealthy. When there's a lot more going on, like most bodybuilders probably smoke as well, because...
Well, in our industry, yeah.
Yeah. And maybe around the world, who knows? But, there's people that are putting things that are messing with their hormones, messing with their internals. But obviously a fat person, you can kind of picture what's wrong with the internals more because you can see the physical outside negatives on the outside, whereas bodybuilders, you see outside positives. Because yes, he's building muscle, and that's what society, as you say, it's changed really from like cars and fancy clothes. Obviously it's still there, but it's more how you look, and that the bigger your bum, the more followers on social media you're going to get. And there's so many different things that are as unhealthy, and to keep those standards up, the mental aspect, your psychological state, as you said, Tiger Woods wasn't allowed to go to parties. He wasn't allowed to interact with friends. He wasn't allowed to be with this girl that he wanted to go out with. His dad didn't let him do any of that. And that, yes, people look at him like, you're amazing. I wish I could be as successful as him. But no one understands actually also the psychological unhealthiness.
And the sacrifices that he has to make in his personal capacity. Yeah, look, for me, it boils down to the issue of if you steal 2 rand or you steal 2 million rand, the bottom, the common denominator is you're a thief. Between the two people that have done that. But so yes, you could argue the cons from a health perspective of both sides. For me, what it comes down on the health aspect is you look at mortality rates in humanity as a whole. Bodybuilding and egregious steroid abuse, something that I'm very outspoken against, is not one of the leading causes of death in human beings as a whole. That's a whole other
And
discussion.
is that obesity
Obesity, coronary heart disease, diabetes,
and not COVID?
and not COVID. Yeah, 100%.
Wasn't there more deaths from still, regardless of COVID or no COVID? The number one death rate was still because of obesity.
Yeah, you can't even compare.
Even the suicides went up during lockdowns.
I think in some countries,
I think it was the UK. I think it was actually like Japan or something. I don't know.
I think it was Japan too. The suicide rates outweighed the death rate from coronavirus.
So then you kind of need a way up.
I'm not entirely sure how true that is. Like I said, you and I could just be paraphrasing, but I did read
I've heard that and you've heard it. So obviously maybe speaking to the same person.
The ramifications of corona and stuff like that are a different discussion. But 88% of people, this is according to the CDC, that died of coronavirus were also obese. That's not coincidental. And while this is happening, you've got Cosmopolitan posting a picture of a clearly obese person that's on the cover saying, "This is healthy." I think that's egregiously irresponsible. In the same way that if Flex magazine posted a picture of Ronnie Coleman and wrote, "This is healthy," I would pull my hair out. It's not healthy. If you want to do that, if you want to be a bodybuilder, if you want to be morbidly obese with 40% body fat, do you. You have my absolute, you have my full support. I'm of the opinion that people need to be who they are and stick by their guns. Those are the people that I respect the most, even if I vehemently disagree with where they stand. What irritates me is, like I said, is the facade and the lies that they're telling their followers. For example, you have someone there that's morbidly obese and basically saying that they're a very healthy individual. Post your blood work. Let's have a look at your blood work. What do you constitute, what do you define as healthy? What would a medical professional sitting there analyzing your blood work call you healthy? And I understand that, BMI, for example, is a very antiquated form of measurement. However, Lane Norton pointed this out at the time. It's the unicorn fallacy. And that means that just because something's perfect doesn't mean that you still can't use it as a measurement tool. And BMI is still a great tool to measure morbidity rates in coronavirus. A bodybuilder who might have perfect blood work because he's a bigger human being and thus has a higher BMI is also more likely to die from coronavirus than someone that has a lower BMI, irrespective of what his body fat percentage is. So too with someone that's morbidly obese, and a lot of these people, and I get sent stuff daily because I just don't follow them. I'm not interested. It just drives me up the wall, who are promoting this fat acceptance under the guise of body positivity, which I'll elaborate on shortly. It's a kind of the emperor's new clothes scenario. They sit in these vacuous echo chambers where everyone's writing stunning, brave, this is amazing, you're doing this. And they post that stuff to try and get that sort of appraisal. And it just, it's just horseshit. It's what you're doing it's not healthy by any stretch of the imagination. You're identifying yourself as a mental health warrior, but anyone with any inkling of a brain cell can determine that what you're doing is not mentally healthy by any stretch of the imagination. What you're promoting is not going to encourage mental health amongst your followers. And I would take just as much exception with someone that is doing that from a bodybuilding perspective. It's not healthy, and people must stop saying that it is. And, as and when people call that shit out for what it is, they think, oh no, you need to be kind, and there's that pseudo-altruistic vibe. So it's a big sort of toxic cesspit at the moment. A lot of the topics we've just discussed are all sort of, just amalgamating into it and just making it. Well,
I was, obviously, I'm sure you know Jordan Peterson. So he was having an argument with the lady. Doesn't matter what the argument was, but she said to him, "You can't say that. That's offensive and that's hurtful." Yes. But she's arguing with him. So yes. He says to her, "Lady, listen here. You are arguing with me and trying to degrade my points of view. How can you be allowed to do that, but I'm not allowed to do the same to you? Just because what society deems correct, I'm arguing against. Why are you more allowed to argue with me and I'm not allowed to argue with you just because I am deemed to be wrong?"
Yeah, I think his exact wording went along the lines of, you telling me that I'm not allowed to be offensive, but you certainly haven't risked being offensive to me to get your point across, and so you should. He said, this conversation's actually been rather uncomfortable. And she went, got me there. She didn't risk offending him to get her point across.
But he
he encouraged that, irrespective of how uncomfortable he felt. And that's exactly what he's trying to do. That's the whole point of having this discourse and having these engagements from fitness to coronavirus to social media to cancel culture, which is, like I said, completely antithetical to that. It's just shutting down thought. Also, under the guise of pseudo-altruism, you can't say that because it's racist. I'd like to understand why it's racist. Oh, no, well, you must be a racist if you can't see the racism in it. That's horseshit, and I don't believe in that at all, and I'll never support that.
At what point do you kind of, do what that lady did? Like, at what point do you allow someone to be offensive? Like, what if someone is being overtly racist and arguing with you about why a certain culture is bad?
Call them out and present a better idea and a better thought process that allows people who are witnessing that engagement to see him and his or her fuckery for what it is. The idea is that in order for us to move forward in society, present the better argument, present the better position.
I think the issue is not everyone is as, equipped with the arsenal of words that you are. So there's so many people that aren't like you, aren't like Jordan, who can't, vocalize exactly what they're thinking and what they believe.
In the same vein, that doesn't give someone that isn't equipped perhaps with that vocabulary or, the brains of a Jordan Peterson, that doesn't give them license just to call something they don't like racist or sexist or misogynist or so on and so forth, because that also undermines the plight of those very pressing issues that need to be discussed and need to be tableized and I wouldn't say rectified, but discussed in society as a whole. So I think that, perpetually calling something a racist actually strengthens racism. Calling a topic racist, just saying something is racist over and over and over again, strengthens racism and actually weakens the plight of those people that are trying to work against that. Same with sexism, misogynism, and so on and so forth. So, I think people should be allowed to speak and people should be allowed to present their ideas, and no one has the right to tell other people that they are the arbiters of what they think should be right or wrong, irrespective of where they are in terms of their vocabulary or their debating skills or their intellect.
I'd like to humanize you a little bit because people might be thinking you're a dictionary or something. You yourself, obviously you say you don't really, like on social media, what do you follow that you enjoy other than bodybuilding? What do you look on social media that you enjoy? Do you enjoy movies? Do you enjoy, what types of pages on Instagram, especially on social media? Do you look at, you enjoy that's obviously out of, your main scope of bodybuilding and fitness?
So I follow a lot of conservative intellectuals abroad in the United States. Jordan Peterson is someone that you brought up because it challenges my way of thinking. It just makes me acutely aware of my own ignorance. And I think that's a very, very empowering, ironically, because I like growing, I like being better, and feeling that there's a proverbial ceiling on that growth is not a nice feeling.
Is that not, would it not be more beneficial to also follow the opposing side?
I do.
Okay.
I do. But it also, I have to draw a fine line because in terms of, I don't agree with the notion that you should just block people or don't follow people you don't agree with, because nothing grows in comfort zones. But in the same vein, when you need to be selective. As I was with Facebook, I removed myself off Facebook because it was too much toxic negativity and people spewing bullshit that I wasn't growing from that experience. So I follow a lot of people in my spare time. Otherwise, as you know, I'm a massive fan of DC and Marvel and those type of movies and things like that.
Probably time you've watched the Snyder Cut.
Well, thanks to you. Yes, I did. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Bro.
It was spectacular.
I'm not one to be able to stay up late because I get up early. So I normally 9 o'clock, if I'm ever watching TV at 9 o'clock, I'm passed out sleeping. Whereas with this, I started watching at 8, obviously finishing at 12. I watched the entire thing, like The Irishman on Netflix with, it was a Martin Scorsese film.
Yes.
That was 3 hours. I couldn't watch the whole thing just because it wasn't the excitement. Obviously, I appreciate maybe comics more. So that's why I was able to pay attention, but also just the filming, the imagery, the music, the score, everything just worked so well together, and it was so much better than what they put out in the movies.
It was great. I think that.
What is your? I would like to know your opinion because I'm anything with Batman. I do have a slightly subjective view of thinking it's good.
Look, I really, 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 really enjoyed it. I think that it was slightly overhyped, if I'm being objective. And I think it was tainted by virtue of the fact that it was released before the butchered product that Warner Brothers presented to us, which was a steaming pile of horse manure. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. It wasn't Endgame and it wasn't Infinity Wars, sadly.
Do you think that is more Endgame is cooler because of the build up to it and the 20,
Absolutely.
prior
There's definitely many reasons for that. And I think DC as a whole is to blame for that.
Yeah.
But correct me if I'm wrong. I think Zack Snyder also did Man of Steel.
Yes.
Which is my favorite superhero movie of all time. I just thought.
And what I enjoy about it is it's not, obviously, there's a little bit of death and stuff in Marvel, but it's not to the extent that there is in DC.
No, it's definitely not as dark.
Have you, I'm trying to think now, Seth Rogen actually produces this series.
Yes.
It's about superheroes, The Boys.
No, I haven't seen it yet.
Do yourself a favor.
I'm actually going to write that down right now.
Bro, please, because Seth Rogen, he is incredible, The Boys. So it's got, whatever his name is. Anyway, so basically it's far more realistic. It's got actual blood, whereas most of these films don't.
Yes.
So literally the opening scene is this guy who's similar. It's basically the Flash equivalent of this universe. This guy's talking to his girlfriend. This Flash guy runs through this chick. Blood spraying everywhere, all over him. And he's on some sort of like superhero steroid.
Yes.
Like obviously you would never get that in Marvel, even DC, because...
Well, not the blood, but you've got the super soldier serum.
Yeah, of course. But like it's basically like him injecting, it's like heroin, but steroid equivalent type thing. And it's so clever and it's real and it's kind of basically, and it's nice because it kind of can relate to how like the NBA is, where these superheroes are basically got a company that looks after them. So they will be like, okay, DC needs let's say Atlanta. The main demographic of Atlanta might be black. We need a black superhero with these things that the people can relate to better. Let's find that black superhero, send him there, and then like they sell him and they trade him with different states in the US. And it's just really interesting how that's how superheroes would be.
Yes,
it would be a company controlling these superheroes and trading them and trying to make money and get rich off them. And these corporations would basically like use them as little pawns to do their bidding to get themselves rich. That's exactly how it would be. It wouldn't be Iron Man doing whatever he wants and the government kind of just stepping back.
Well, it's the thing about Iron Man. I'll disagree with you. I think the things with regards to Iron Man and Batman is that the appeal of those two characters is that they have no superhero abilities. They've just got lots of money and they're super smart.
There's more relatability to it.
So there's a lot more possibility of there being a potential Iron Man or a Batman than, for example,
Superman.
Kryptonian. But yeah, I completely agree. I love the Marvel. It's also just really nice. I think the thing about superheroes that's so attractive is that people look at the hidden meaning behind it and they draw parallels between a lot of the superheroes' backstories and their own life stories and their strengths and weaknesses as their own. For example, the Hulk always appealed to me because the more angry you got, the stronger you got. And obviously when I was growing up school, got bullied, got teased a lot. I used a lot of that as perpetual fuel to get me into the gym and to train and to fuel my workouts, as I think a huge cohort of people listening to this have done the same. So I think that's where the appeal of the superheroes come from. People, idolize those specific characters and draw parallels between those characters and adversity that they experience in their own life or upbringing.
So who's your favorite? That we can see what you've drawn from them.
Hulk's probably, I've always got a soft spot for Hulk. I think he's amazing.
And what version of Hulk in terms of the cinematic universes?
Oh no, so the definitely World War Hulk, sort of Thor Ragnarok Hulk. I thought he was great. The Hulk that's sort of...
Not like the Norton, the first Hulk.
He was also great. I really, really enjoyed him. But the Hulk that sort of jumped onto Surtur's face and was punching him at the end of the movie, and Thor was like, no, you ruined everything. The one that can
talk, the one that's a bit more cognitive, and the one that, has a bit of humor as well. No,
I didn't like.
Oh, you didn't?
I didn't like that. I like because Thor. He was in Thor Ragnarok. He was still kind of like dopey.
Yes.
And would fight anything. He would go up against any adversity, irrespective of how big it would. Case in point, when he attacked Surtur, I really enjoyed that.
Hulk smash was just his mindset.
That's it. He didn't care how bad or how big the scenario it was. He was going in at all costs. It just reminds me of that saying. I read once in one of the Marvel sort of quotes. It said that although Thanos has routinely beaten Hulk in the comics, Hulk is one of the only characters that Thanos actively avoids at all costs. Hulk doesn't care about winning or losing. He just knows that as soon as he gets back on his feet, he wants to hurt you.
And most of the damage that he suffers makes him stronger.
Exactly. So that's why I really enjoy Hulk. But I go through moments like I'll obviously go back and I'll watch Endgame again, and then I just think, Thor was such a G, or Captain America's amazing. I just love them all. I think it was really, really good, and I enjoyed Endgame. I thought for what they did, it was fantastic. If they had somehow managed to give Hulk the rematch that he deserved from the first one, because they definitely gave it to Thor, Captain America, and Iron Man.
Yeah,
I thought that would have been absolutely incredible. But you're packing so much into, and I think it was nearly a 3-hour film.
Yeah.
So I love superhero movies. I also enjoy fishing quite a bit, Jesse.
Yeah, you do fish a lot.
I do. It's not so much about pulling in an animal with a bent piece of wire in its mouth as it is about switching off from social media.
Would you chow when you do catch? Do you chow? Do you release?
I catch and release everything. It's very rewarding for me to watch those animals swim away.
And what if you are in if you go to the ocean or whatever, where there's obviously a bit more abundance, and it is a fish that there is a vast majority of?
Look, I eat fish. I eat pilchards. I eat a lot of tuna. If I have to, I will. And if it's part of the mandate of where we're going in terms of difficult logistically to carry food and stuff like that, I'll do that. But I prefer not to. The whole thing of watching that animal swim away and maybe putting a tag in it and hearing that it got captured or recaptured 3 years down the line, 5 Ks up the coast. That's it increases that experience in lieu of just killing it. And a lot of those animals, particularly saltwater fish you kill, you watch their life and that incredible vibrant color that they have drain out of them.
Yeah.
It kind of removes the element for me. Yes, I enjoy eating fish, but I'm not going to fish to eat the fish. I'm going to switch off, first of all, from social media. I'm going to go where there's very remoteness. There's very little people, and I can unwind and stuff. I'm actually a lot
calming.
more. I'm a lot more introverted than extroverted. But by virtue of the fact that I'm training so many people, and I've got a lot of people relying and depending on me and looking at me as a bastion of motivation and leadership. From the affiliate trainers to my own clients, going fishing once a week in a remote area. Sorry, not once a week, once a month. In a remote area.
You wish it was once a week.
I wish it was once a week. Allows me to recharge my batteries so that I'm in such a position where I can come back and I can give my utmost to my clients. It's like something that I disagree with Gary Vee on. He's like, he doesn't understand how people can live for the weekend, and he hates weekends. It's not about that. It's about I enjoy the slingshot effect of going back there, like the analogy of drawing the bow and arrow string back. Going there, regrouping, recharging my batteries, knowing full well that I'm going to come back with an overflowing cup to give as much as I possibly can to my clients and my affiliates.
Well, I think it was Warren Buffett said he would rather have 8 hours of sleep than 4 hours of sleep, because it's far more beneficial after he's woken up for the rest of the day, as opposed to continuing to work and then getting less sleep and being less productive when you wake up again.
Exactly. So, fishing is just a means to an end. It's not about catching. Sometimes I can go there and I can have a great fishing trip and I would have caught very little fish, but it's being nature, it's being in the sea, it's being alone with my own thoughts.
Do you take Sarah with?
No. I said, also good to sort of, as they say, absence makes the heart grow fonder. She's got her horse riding, which she really enjoys.
Okay, yes.
And also we work together in addition to the fact that we're married. So we're in each other's pockets.
You do need that
faces.
time apart.
That time apart is very, very important. Just to reload and recharge.
Awesome. Bro, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure, Jess. Yeah, we covered quite a lot of topics. I think we did. I think each one of those topics would probably need a podcast on its own.
Yeah.
And we sort of merged a lot of them, but it's always a pleasure coming through and chatting to you.
Of course.
Didn't rant nearly as much as I'd want to, but it's just an excuse to come back again.
It was a dulled version of you, but I think people maybe
we'll give them the PG-13 version for now.
I think it still might seem 16 to them though.
Yes. R18 is coming. Stay tuned.
That's coming. That will be on your podcast.
Yes.
Coming soon. Jack, what would you call a podcast that you had?
I can't remember what Kyle and I named it.
Would it be within the STS brand, or would it be personal to you?
No, it'd be in my personal capacity. I think I think most of the stuff I talk on would be bodybuilding and fitness related, but also like I said, like we did today, we can obviously divulge into politics, different political ideologies, comic books, movies. There's lots we can discuss.
Awesome. Bro, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And thank you guys for listening.